Yeah.
Two fantastic ACC matchups. An in-state showdown in Texas. A great quarterback battle in Huntington. And can Georgia Tech pull off an upset for the second week in a row? Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, bringing you our Week 3 college football predictions. As always, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. And check out everything down in the description below, where you can get extra college football news and analysis by subscribing to our newsletter on our website, thegridironexpert.com, and also signing up for our expert picks and all of the offers we have for you over on our Patreon account as well. So week 2 of the college football season was as good as it could get. We had tons of upsets left and right, most of them taking place in the Big 12, as the conference went 0-3 against Sun Belt teams. Georgia Tech added to that list by having a thrilling come-from-behind victory against Florida State down in Tallahassee. And now we enter week 3 of the season with a chance to have even better football than we had last weekend. We briefly broke down the big headlines going into our top 5 games of this weekend, and it could have been even better, as we unfortunately are not going to be able to see number 21 BYU taking on number 22 Army, and Virginia taking on number 20 Virginia Tech. Both of those games being postponed due to COVID-19. But nonetheless, we still found 5 fantastic matchups, one of which will be our first ranked versus ranked matchup of 2020. Let's go ahead and start up at the top, though, with Syracuse traveling to take on the 25th ranked Pittsburgh Panthers. Now, going into this ACC matchup, guys, I want to take a look at what happened last year. Let's take a look at what happened in 2019's matchup before we break down what's going to happen in 2020. Pittsburgh went into the Carrier Dome last year and took down the Orange 27-20. A major reason for their success last year was because they had 9 sacks against the Orange. They sacked Syracuse 9 times in that game. Now keep in mind, Syracuse had one of the worst offensive lines in the country, while Pittsburgh was number 1 in the country when it came to sacks per game. So that is extremely impressive, and I would expect just about the same to happen here in this season's matchup. Syracuse last week allowed 7 sacks to North Carolina, a game which they lost 31-6 despite only trailing 10-6 entering the fourth quarter. They allowed 7 sacks to the Tar Heels, and I'm going to go out and say that I think this Pittsburgh defense is just as good, if not better, than the very experienced defense that we saw out of Mack Brown's North Carolina squad last week. Another key in this game is Kenny Pickett, the Pittsburgh quarterback. He threw for 277 yards and a touchdown last week, while also adding a rushing touchdown in that shutout victory against Austin Peay, Pittsburgh's first shutout since 2014. So Kenny Pickett, he played well under Mark Whipple's offense. Can he succeed against a Syracuse defense that did a decent job against Sam Howell, picked off the star quarterback 2 times in that game, but still allowed a touchdown and 295 yards? To me, the 2 interceptions is the big key. We know that Syracuse is led by Andre Cisco in that secondary. You pick off Sam Howell 2 times in one game. That's pretty dang impressive considering he took very good care of the football in his freshman season. So Kenny Pickett is going to have to do a good job of taking care of the ball in this game, while Syracuse is going to have to do a good job of blocking that very strong Pittsburgh defensive line. And look at this here, though, guys. North Carolina, again, held Syracuse to just 202 total yards in last week's victory. Again, I do believe Pittsburgh's defense is just as good, if not better, than the Tar Heels. And I believe at home, as a nationally ranked team, the Panthers defeat the Orange by at least 10 points. By at least 10 points, the Panthers will win this game, dropping the Orange to 0-2. Following that game, we have Houston traveling to Baylor, an in-state showdown in the state of Texas. This is the season opener for both teams, even though it shouldn't be. Baylor should have played Louisiana Tech just last week. Louisiana Tech having to cancel that game due to a coronavirus outbreak. this weekend, actually, Friday night, Houston was supposed to take on Memphis, but the Tigers had a coronavirus outbreak themselves. So luckily, these two teams were able to resolve their issues and were able to find each other and schedule each other to get one game in before each takes on their conference slate. Now, this is a big game for many reasons. Obviously, anytime you get to take on an in-state rival, another team within your state, that's a big deal. It always makes for a good football game. But this is also Dave Aranda's debut as the head coach of the Bears. Keep in mind, Dave Aranda, the former defensive coordinator at LSU, was the defensive coordinator for LSU last year. One of the best defensive minds in the game now comes over to take a Bears squad that was one of the biggest surprise teams in all of college football in 2019 by making the Big 12 championship, and had they won that, would have made the college football playoff. The Bears going 11-3. This is a game that has the potential to be a shootout. You have a fantastic quarterback with Baylor in Charlie Brewer, and an improving quarterback in Clayton Tune for Houston, who threw for a little over 1,500 yards and 11 touchdowns last season when he took over after De'Aaron King decided to opt out. He chose to sit out in the 2019 season. Clayton Tune kind of came in and filled the void for him. And I thought, despite a disappointing 4-8 season, Tune played relatively well. Tune also has the benefit of having one of the best wide receivers in the American Athletic Conference in Marquez Stevenson, who had over 900 reception yards and 9 touchdowns last year. You have a wide receiver battle there between Stevenson and Baylor's Tyquan Thornton, along with Baylor's run game led by Jonathan Lovett and Tristan Ebner. So much offensive firepower in this game, guys, that you will see a possible shootout because Baylor only returns 2 starters on the defensive side of the ball from one of the best defenses within the Big 12 last year. And while Houston does return 7 starters on their side of the ball, this is a Houston defense that allowed 34 points per game last year and 288.4 passing yards per game last year. In a season opener, I don't expect Houston's defense to play lights-out football. Same can be said for the Bears. So in a game that I think is a little bit closer than expected, I believe that Dave Aranda's Bears get the win here, mostly behind the arm of Charlie Brewer, a guy that I do think exploits some weaknesses in that Houston secondary, and a guy whose experience is going to be huge in this game. So Baylor gets the win in Waco and kicks off the Dave Aranda era with a win. We now move down to Huntington. Number 25, Appalachian State, taking on Marshall. Now, for many people, you'll look at this game and you'll say, why? Why is this one of your top 5 games of the week? To me, this is a sneaky good game and has the potential to be the best game of this weekend, guys. You not only have a fantastic battle between a always perennial Sun Belt Conference title contender, along with a perennial Conference USA title contender, but you have a battle here between 2 fantastic quarterbacks, one of which played lights-out football just a few weeks ago, and Marshall, Grant Wells, a guy that no one knew his name just a few weeks ago. We look at this game. Marshall beat Eastern Kentucky 59-0. That's not that big a deal when you look at it. What is a big deal is that Grant Wells, the redshirt freshman who took over for Isaiah Green, who surprised everybody by choosing to transfer, Grant Wells threw for 307 yards and 4 touchdowns in his collegiate debut. That's a big deal. I don't care who the opponent is against. Wells looked like a veteran in that game against Eastern Kentucky. 307 yards, a Marshall record for a debut quarterback, and 4 touchdowns. He looked calm in the pocket. He was making big throw after big throw, tight spirals, placing the ball only where his receivers could get it. And he now goes up against a veteran quarterback in Zach Thomas. Obviously a major reason for Appalachian State's success over these past few years, especially now that they're dealing with their 3rd head coach in the past 3 seasons, now Sean Clark. So this is a very, very big game and a very, very intriguing game, one that kind of like Houston and Baylor could be, in a way, a shootout. The key in this game is not going to be your quarterback battle, although that's going to be huge, but your key in this game is going to be your running game and your running defense. Appalachian State last week had 308 rushing yards against Charlotte, a team they defeated 35-20. Marshall, when they played against Eastern Kentucky, had 282 rushing yards. Keep in mind they do have Brendan Knox, the 2019 Conference USA Offensive Player of the Year. Appalachian State against Charlotte allowed 146 rushing yards, while Marshall allowed just 86. Marshall is coming into this game with a week of rest, something that many could say is a benefit, something that will suit them well in this game, or something that many could see as a disadvantage considering Appalachian State just played Charlotte and is going to turn around and play another football game. They're going to stay hot. They're going to stay ready, while Marshall's had a little bit of a week to cool down. So that's something that people could be a little concerned about here. But I look at this game. I look at all of the key pieces here. I like Marshall's defense just a little bit better than App State's right now. Appalachian State, I thought, would beat Charlotte by more, considering everything that the 49ers lost. Appalachian State really didn't impress me that much. Marshall, again, despite it being against Eastern Kentucky, did impress me. I like the Thundering Herd's defense just a tad bit more. I like their running game a tad bit more, and the Thundering Herd will have the slight home field advantage in this game. Give me Marshall in a mini upset over what many are considering the Sun Belt favorite going into this season. The Thundering Herd steal a huge win over the Mountaineers. Doc Holliday continuing to do great work with his Thundering Herd program. Following that mini upset, we have number 14, Central Florida, taking on Georgia Tech. We said at the beginning of this video, can the Yellow Jackets pull off a second straight upset? They were nearly 2 touchdown underdogs in that victory over Florida State, a game they trailed 10-0 at halftime, in a game that they outscored the Seminoles 16-3 in the second half. They ended up beating Florida State 16-13. So that was a huge win for Jeff Collins and his Yellow Jackets. That's a season-defining win and a huge momentum win for Georgia Tech. A game where they put up 438 yards of total offense. Not going to take anything away from the Yellow Jackets. All the credit in the world to them. All the credit in the world for Jeff Collins for instilling that culture of we get down on the road, we're not going to stop fighting. We get 2 field goals blocked, we're not going to stop fighting. We throw 2 interceptions deep in Florida State territory, we're not going to stop fighting. And they did not stop fighting, and they came out with a huge win, spoiling Mike Norvell's debut with the Seminoles. I was also very impressed with Georgia Tech quarterback Jeff Sims, a freshman who originally was a Florida State commit before decommitting and then committing to Georgia Tech. Sims had 341 total yards in that game. It was a major reason for Georgia Tech's comeback, along with, of course, the Yellow Jackets defense, which I believe, as many would say, is extremely underrated, especially in that secondary. The question is, can Georgia Tech's secondary shut down what is certainly going to be a much better offense in Central Florida than they faced in Florida State? The Knights averaged 43.4 points per game in 2019, and they returned practically all of their offense from last year. You have Dylan Gabriel, you have Trey Nixon, you have Greg McCrae, you have Otis Anderson. This Central Florida team is stacked from top to bottom, despite losing many players coming into this game. The defense, keep in mind, yes, they do lose a lot of starters due to the coronavirus, due to many of them opting out, but they still only allowed 23 points per game last year. Everybody focuses so much on Central Florida's offense, they kind of forget about their defense. And this is a game where I think the Knights have a better offense than Florida State had, and I think they have a better defense than Florida State had. So despite this game being in Atlanta, despite Georgia Tech riding high after such a monumental victory, I believe it's the Knights in their season opener that comes in and gets a win over the Yellow Jackets. Prior to this game, prior to Georgia Tech's victory over Florida State, many would have had the Knights pegged as a 14-point favorite, maybe more. Now they're only around a 7-point favorite. I do think this game remains very close. Georgia Tech, you have to start taking them a little bit seriously now, especially now that they have found themselves a quarterback and maybe a little bit more stability in that new offense under Jeff Collins. But I think Central Florida had a little too much talent, a little too much more speed on top to bottom, both on offense and defense, and the Knights storm into Atlanta and get a huge win for a team that is trying to get back to a New Year's Six bowl game after a disappointing 10-3 2019. And then finally, on our top 5 games of Week 3, we have the first ranked versus ranked matchup of 2020. It's number 17 Miami taking on number 18 Louisville. Now this is going to be a fantastic matchup. It's your primetime ABC game on Saturday night. This is a matchup, guys, from last year that Miami defeated Louisville 52-27. They took down the Cardinals 52-27, a 25-point victory last year. Something that, even though the game was at Miami, something that I don't think a lot of people saw coming, especially considering Miami had so many offensive struggles last year. They didn't have the offensive struggles in that game, as Jaron Williams threw 6 touchdowns and their defense forced 3 Louisville turnovers. I don't expect any of that to happen this year. While you may see quite a bit of points being scored, as Miami does have Derek King at quarterback, Cameron Harris at running back, leading a rushing attack for Miami that had 337 rushing yards against UAB last week, I still think Miami's offense struggles a little bit against a very much improved Louisville defense that held former Maryland quarterback Tyrell Pigrome at Western Kentucky to just 248 total yards. So I look at that, guys, and I think about this. Louisville last year relied so much on their offense because their defense was practically non-existent. They held Western Kentucky last week to the yards we just said, 248, and 21 total points. I also look at Miami and I say, Derek King, while he did clinch his 16th straight game with a passing touchdown and a rushing touchdown, Derek King missed a lot of key throws in that game against UAB. Missed a lot of key throws in that game against UAB. And while they did defeat the Blazers by 17 points, the defense was not all that impressive to me. Sure, they held the Blazers to 14. But the Blazers were in that game midway through the third quarter before the Hurricanes finally pulled away. So this game being played in Louisville, I believe that Scott Satterfield has a plan to keep Derek King in the pocket and force King to try to win this game through the air. Something that right now I don't think he is able to do. Louisville uses the speed of Mikhail Cunningham, Tutu Atwell, and Javion Hawkins to exploit a few weaknesses in Miami's usually strong defense, and the Cardinals get revenge over the Hurricanes after a devastating and blowout defeat they suffered last year. The game's much closer this year, but it's the Cardinals that get their revenge and start off the season at 2-0. So guys, there you have it. Your top 5 games of Week 3. We will have extra analysis on 2 of these games coming later this week. So you certainly do not want to miss out on that. Our 2 game of the weeks coming out later this week for some more in-depth analysis and more reasoning on our predictions. But right now, it is Pittsburgh, Baylor, Marshall, Central Florida, and Louisville taking home the wins in our top 5 games of Week 3, a college football Saturday that I can promise you do not want to miss. So guys, thank you so much for watching us here at the Gridiron Expert on YouTube. As always, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, and share our videos. And also make sure to check out everything down in the description below, where you can follow us on our social media pages, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Constant updates every single Saturday. And also get exclusive content on our website, thegridironexpert.com, with our newsletter and our expert picks. And once again, guys, as always, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time right here on The Gridiron Expert.